buckle in. We're going to have a pretty good night, a long night going on here. Look, I got to turn this down. So let me turn that down. So if you see my eyes become averted here this evening, I've got I have my iPad down here on the floor, making sure that the signal's coming back. So I've learned how to do that a little bit, okay? Back this way, I have a drink, so from time to time, I might be leaning back, so I apologize. I'm trying to maintain eye contact with you. And then I'm actually going to come out of this screen here and just get into my slide presentation here. So hey, so a little house cleaning before we get going here tonight. Yes, this session will be recorded. Yes, it's going to be recorded, and there will be a replay available. And I'll keep that replay going here. I'm not quite sure how long it takes for it to process, and then that it's doable. I think it's almost instantly here on Facebook. But then what will happen is that will be downloaded, and that's going to go into the member vault. So for a limited amount of time, it will be available here on the screen. So there's also, you have the opportunity, if you think it's worthwhile or whatever, I think for there'll be a chance to get it out of the vault. So it's like $4 or something. I think that's what they charge me for that. So anyhow, hey, so I'm glad you're here. There's a lot to get through here tonight. So, I want to jump right into it. If you have any questions, go right ahead, dump them into the chat as we're going. Ask your questions as we're going. At any point in time when we get to the end, I'll set aside time as well, and you can, put them there, and then we'll get them up on the screen, and we'll get them going. So I'm flying solo here this evening. Normally my partner here, she's off hiking somewhere here, and is not in the house with me tonight. And like everything else at this moment in time, we not allowed to be on the ball fields with our teams and playing. So the next best thing is to talk about it a little bit, and to maybe learn some things and make some exchanges and so on and so forth that way, so that we can do that. So hey, I've got my slippers on. I'm leaning back. I'm all cleaned up for you. I smell good. So it can't get any better than this right now, okay? So hang tight with me. If anything happens from a technical standpoint, it's my apologies to you, and hang in there with me. And, hey, it's not what I do, okay? All right. So if we're all set, I'm going to hop over here into the slides here, okay? So away we go. So, what we're going to do here today, the foundation that you set up is extremely important, because everything that you're going to do next is going to be built on the work that you begin doing right here. And, when I'm talking about doing the work right here, I'm talking about what goes on inside your head as we begin to do things, as we start to create our swing, okay? And when I'm talking about building our swing, that's exactly what we're talking about. So it's not just something that happens randomly. I want to be very deliberate about how I'm doing that, okay? So there's an author by the name of Wayne Dyer, and Wayne once wrote, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that's pretty much the way I've approached baseball and softball training. So I have a very contrarian way of looking at situations, and if you know me, then I have very little belief in current instruction methods, because whether it's disinformation or misinformation, or just presented in a confusing way, or it's in a domineering way, like it's my way or no way, I have a lot of issues with what's going on out there today. So for me, and I get that way. Believe it or not, I come honestly by that, because, for the most part, I'm coming out of a hockey background. And when I'm involved with hockey, we were a huge family. There just weren't a lot of people playing hockey in Pennsylvania at the time, right? And so we were willing to help. Well, baseball's always been like a little bit secretive, that, we can help you a little bit, but we don't want to help you too much, because the guy next to you, your buddy, well, you're in competition with him, and he's going to take your spot. So let's don't give him too much information. And, believe it or not, that's truth, because I actually sat in on a meeting where that was told to an organization, right? So for me, I sort of gravitate towards coaches and players that excuse me here, I get a notice that pops up here on my screen. So I sort of gravitate towards coaches and players, and minds that start asking questions in different ways. And I've had some major influences in my life, and you can, and I draw from them, and I put them into our instruction. I implement them, and those would be guys like you hear me talk about. You hear me talk about people like Coach Perry Husband, and Coach Lance Wheeler, and Coach Ron Wolforth, and Coach Joey Myers, and Carol Dweck, and Hunter Bledsoe. And those are all positives. And to an extent, I would look at Daniel Coyle, and maybe in a good way, maybe in a bad way, but what Mr. Coyle does is he brings a perspective that makes you ask a better question. Okay, and having said that, one of the foremost influences is this gentleman, is a gentleman by the name of Paul Nyman, who back in the early 90s had a little blog going by the name of Set Pro. And what Paul did was he just upset the apple cart, which is actually pretty cool. You talk about the ultimate contrarian. This is the guy who starts it. And Paul has had a monumental effect on baseball training and development. He's been a major influencer in how movement plays a part in developing abilities, right? He is the originator of that idea of intent. Okay, and we're going to talk about that here in just a few minutes, but he is that guy. Okay, now what Paul did was he would create these models, and unfortunately the original Set Pro site no longer exists. Every now and again you'll see some of his models come out there, but what he did when he created these models, and Paul's an engineer, he would create these models so that you could literally put in a mathematical number to for different characteristics, different effects per se. Okay. And he did that. And he did that for two purposes. Okay, he did that for two purposes. And the one purpose was he would do that so you could see the how, right? So that maybe it was a different angle of the shoulder, a different angle of an arm, or the rotational aspect of a hip. Okay, and he was very, very, very clear on understanding that what he was creating was the how. It was not the why. Okay, he was creating the how and not the why, and that's going to play a pretty big part, in what we're talking about, because what happens through all that, he starts to make you think about things. And the question that I've been asking is a powerful question, and it is, what does a hitter want to optimize? What's he trying to optimize? Meaning, what result do you, your son, your daughter, what do you really want? And are his or her decisions moving them towards those results effectively? Okay? So that's what I start to talk about. Well, in Paul's research, he would coined a phrase that made popular by a scientist by the name of Edward Lorenz. He was, I believe he's a meteorologist, believe it or not, and he coined it the butterfly effect. And you'll hear Lance talk about the butterfly effect a lot, and I use it only because of the influence of hearing it. And basically what Edward Lorenz, it all comes down to this idea that small changes can create large differences. And Edward Lorenz had put out this idea that the effects of a butterfly beating its wings thousands of miles away could cause a ripple in the universe that would lead to a tornado thousands of miles away. Okay, so that was what that was known. So when we get into all of this, always keep in mind that when you change one thing, you're changing everything, and that's pretty much what you hear me say. These seem like simple questions. What I have here on the screen, how do I hit hard? How do I create more power? And probably the one that gets me the most, cuts me to the quick. Kids will say, "I'm bad. Why am I so bad? Why does this happen to me?" Okay, so when I start to hear these questions, I'm not hearing a mechanical question. Okay, and that's what I think has happened here. Okay, and let me just pull up. I pulled this slide out from another presentation, and all I want you to do is, I want you to understand, how did we get here? How did we get to where we are at this day and age? If you were here with me last night, I kicked off a little bit of I just came on real briefly because I said over the last 30 years, batting averages have actually, they've declined. Okay, and if our instruction is so good, how can we account for the fact that they've gone down, right? And I pulled out the numbers, and I don't have them right here in front of me, but in like 1930, the major league batting average was 296, right, for the whole league, right? And in like 1950, it's like 272. Well, it's 252 as of 2019, right? And we just haven't played yet this year. Okay, so if that's the truth, well, how is this happening, right? Well, this graph here on the left, and I don't know, do I have a pointer? I think I do. I'm going to use it. So this graph here on the left, it's just showing usage, the percentage of usage, internet users per 100 people worldwide. Worldwide. Okay, this purple line, and you probably can't tell it, but this line right here, that's a purple line. It says the developed world. 81 out of 100 in 2020. This came out 2019. Excuse me, 2019. Okay. What is now here in 2020 is the fact that since the virus has hit, internet usage by the average person is now 10 hours a day. 10 hours. So that's a lot. That's a lot of exposure to a lot of information, right? So it's there, and it could be good information, or it could be bad information. It could be correct, or it could be flawed. So in 0.53 seconds, I did this. When I was preparing here for tonight, I just did a quick search. I typed in hitting mechanics, and in less than a little bit more than a half a second, less than a second, in 0.53 seconds, it returned 1.8 million results on mechanics, right? And yet our numbers are going down, and yet we can just hop on and get information, okay? Whether it's good or bad, we don't know that. We just don't know it. So if you're a player or a coach, or you're a parent of a player that's been struggling, in their game, you're confused, you're lacking direction, you feel like things are working in contradictions, then join the crowd, because you're not alone. How did we get there? Well, we start looking at video, okay? And then prior to the onset of video, you've got guys exchanging information, right? They're just exchanging information. So in the late 60s, video becomes very accessible, right? And major league teams are starting to look at video clips, how-tos, right? It filters down into the rest of baseball, and we're firmly entrenched by the late 70s, okay, into the use of video. And what happens is video ends up looking at point-to-point movements. They look at point-to-point movements. They sort of, it's the demise of this holistic approach, how everything affects everything, right? And so what happens when this is going on, these movements, we start to discard portions of what's going on. The mental, the emotional, the neuromuscular, the, and like the central nervous system and things that like I don't know, and like you're going to know if I said like the para whatever, the right, all these items are sort of thrown out the window, and everything becomes a muscular look at, right? It's a muscular activity. Everything's exclusively built about, well, we've got to get to this point. Well, that may not be the truth, my young friends, right? I think what we have done is we've created, maybe let me shut up here. I think we have this. Is it going to happen for me? I don't know. Okay, so what happens is we've created this association. When it comes up here, it'll come up here, I suppose, for us. Okay, we've created this association of success with positions.
Something else to note here is does a really good job of getting his hands inside the ball. This is probably
getting his hands inside the ball. He's getting his hands inside the ball. Okay, and to me, this is one of those things that sets us up for failure, right? We're going to take an 18-year-old kid, a 17-year-old kid, a 15-year-old player, and we're going to compare him to a 26, 27-year-old player and how they go about doing things. Basically, what we're doing is we're talking about how this makes Mike Trout have a 100-mile-an-hour bat exit speed, not why you do or you don't, okay? He's going to move exceptionally different. Mike Trout's not a small guy, okay? So I think we're going to have some other things working. But we get to this idea of hands inside the ball, and you know me, I'm just going to tell you, I think that's a load of crap. Okay, we hear about this all the time. We understand where the strong position is, but if I'm looking here, let me see if I can grab my pointer again. If I'm looking here, I'm looking at, did I get it? Where are you? Oh, it won't go over the screen here on the YouTube insert. But I'm looking at his left arm, and we can see the bend in the elbow. Okay, that's a weaker position of that elbow. You want to talk about hands inside the ball? Let me know if I'm wrong about this. So we've got an action where we're moving forward, and we're going to rotate into an action, right? We're going to rotate into this action. Well, it seems to me, if that's the truth, it seems to me my hands are inside the ball all the time, okay? So, again, this is where we start associating positions with success. And we're going to talk about these ideas, the belief. We created a belief that this thing of perfect mechanics exists, okay? And you'll hear me always talk, this is Adrian Beltre, you'll always hear me talk about the Adrian Beltre story, okay? Well, this is Adrian when he's in Boston, and this is Adrian, this is his signature move. You'll see him flush that knee down. I mean, big dude loads up into it and does this. So if I recall, this was like a Friday night in Boston in May, early May, and I can't recall the opponent, but Beltre goes down and he gets a ball and pretty much in this position similar to this, and he hits a home run with this. And where he hits this home run, it is, if you know Fenway, the Green Monster rolls around into center field, and then it stops. And at that point, center field has a great big cutout that goes to where an access point for the field equipment and such. But where that cutout begins, right where the wall stops, it's 377 feet. And then it goes back in there to over 400 feet. I really don't know what it is, but it doesn't matter. And if you were to watch that home run hits in between the first and the second row. He gets it about 378 when he hits this ball, right? And, the next night that night and the next day on ESPN and everything, this is the celebration of all things, okay? This is the tip and rip. This is where tip and rip comes from. You're looking at it, and it's played back and forth, and it's the home run of the year, and, right, it's making the monthly highlights. And all of a sudden, we start getting people to talk about tip and rip with our young kids. Now, Adrian Beltre, I believe he's about 6'4". He was about 250. I think when he was playing. Um, I never had a kid walk into my door that was 6'4", 250 at the age of 15. Yet I got kids that are tipping and ripping. Okay? Now, far be it from me to stop you from it. Okay? But here's what happens. The next year he signs and he goes down and he plays in Texas. And in a late April Saturday game, Adrian Beltre hit one to dead center, 458 feet. And when he hits it, he's upright, locked out with the lead arm, well up off his feet, right? And it's 458. And I'm thinking, because he's in Texas, I don't think a lot of people ever saw that home run. Okay? I just don't think we ever saw it. But what had happened here in the meantime is, if you're talking to me, here's what I'm going to tell you. I want to practice hitting the 458, and I can't do the math real fast, but you could do the math. Take 380 and divide it by 460, and it probably comes out to about 75%. So everyone wants to practice at the 75% mark, and I'm thinking, well, that's just crazy. We start hands inside the ball. Well, we're going to start at 80-80. We're going to get cheated down from there, right? My belief is we square up a ball maybe once every 350 swings. If you're a professional guy, it's probably about once every 60, just because of the amount of work that you're doing. Okay, but as an amateur, we're probably about once every 350, right? And what's it look like? It's the knuckleball that goes past the pitcher's ear on the line drive, right? So when we start doing this with these guys, when we start using video capture and we start comparing them to the Mike Trouts of the game, all we're doing is we're setting up our hitters for failure. Okay, again, this is why Mike Trout hits 100 miles an hour. Okay, it has no correlation to what we're doing. Okay, so here's what happens now. Science says, hey, we're data driven. Well, data is the what, it's not the why. And the information is only as good as the interpretation. So here's what science says. It says, we're going to go look at the video, and it says, well, he's got a poor stance. We're going to go look at the video, and we're going to say, well, his balance is off. We're going to go look at the video, and we're going to say, wow, his hands are coming forward. He lacks separation. His hands drop. He rolls to his heel. The instep of his foot rolls back. His hands are in. His hands are out. He can't hit up. He can't hit down. He can't hit inside. He can't hit outside. And all that we begin to do is we start to take all these correlations of maybe a particular characteristic, maybe that of timing, and we start calling them issues. All right? We look at correlations, and we don't look at the cause. And to do this, what we will do is we will go and focus on drills on the symptoms. Okay? Well, you got jammed. Well, let's put the tee out in front, and let's work on an hour of hitting the ball in the left field. Okay. Well, you pulled that outside corner. Let's work on putting the tee and hitting the ball into right field for another half hour. Okay. So what I'm trying to get at here, the data is the what. Okay. It's not the why. It tells us what has happened. It showed us how that happened. Okay. It does not convey the process. Okay. What am I looking at here? I don't think this is Hit Tracks. I don't know. Rapsodo. This looks like Rapsodo. All right. So, okay, you tell me what you're getting out of it. I got a 20-degree launch angle, and that gave me 411 feet, and the ball exit speed was 101 mile an hour. Okay. Fantastic. Okay. I don't know what that means to me as a hitter. Okay. It's nice. I could, put this on my Instagram. Okay, and let everybody else see it, and I would be very happy to have that, but I don't know the why of that. I know how that happened. I just don't know why it happened. Okay, and I'm not throwing the data under the bus, right? It is useful, and it does need to be a part of our process, but we have to find a useful way to measure it. We just can't always keep going back saying, well, look at this, look at this, look at this point, look at these points. So I pull out this clip here of Ichiro. Okay, so we'll just take a look at it. Right. So what are hitting mechanics? Well, there are a series of that are controlled by the brain and not the body. Okay, now Ishiro, I love Ishiro. Okay, and is his this was his signature move here, where he's going to see how that is. But I've watched Ishiro practice. He could launch. Okay, so it's not like he didn't have that, but he's got something else that's moving on here, right? And this is the guy who had 4 or 5 of the greatest hitting seasons of all time. He came over a little bit older. You know, maybe the fastest to 2,000 hits. I'm not sure. I think he's pretty close to it. But anyhow, you know, just a phenomenal individual to watch hit. Okay, and he did some things that also reminded me of some martial arts. All right, if you recall, he used to point the bat and then pull the sleeve back. That has a martial arts root. There was something that he was doing there. It wasn't for show. So you know, so there's a lot of things that were going through his mind as he created his swing. Excuse me, and it may have been that he was unaware of it. He did it, but he did do it nonetheless, right? So each movement is a function of the previous movement, right? So when we're talking about hitting mechanics, I think what we want to do, we want to start thinking quality over quantity, being mindful over mindless, deliberate, right? Strategy over style, strategy over opportunity, right? So, and this, I think, is the biggest point. This is the first brick that we're going to lay tonight, is to understand what it is about my hitting strategy, okay? And what's the difference between strategy and style? Well, style would be a scissor kick. Style would be a leg lift. Style would be a nose stride, okay? Style would be a toe drag, whatever, right? And you're going to have guys who tell you, well, this is the best way, this is the best way, this is the best way. Well, not necessarily. What is the best way for you? I would tell you, if we've left you alone and we were to watch, and I doggone it, just thinking of this, we probably should have had a clip of a young boy hitting. Okay, if we just gave someone a wiffle ball bat, a little fella, we would probably see the rear foot trying to re-anchor. Okay, and we would probably see it look a little bit like Giancarlo Stanton. Okay, and I think of him because that's such an exaggerated, but we see Altuve, you know, Trout is right. All these guys are re-anchoring. Okay, and I think above anything, you know, we have to seek clarity. What is it that I'm trying to accomplish with my swing, right? When I am clear with that, I can start to become a problem solver. Okay, boy, you know, I'm just going back over what I would say is, you know, success is easy. Success is easy to do. Okay, the problem with it is it's easier not to do. So it's easier not to do, right? So we have to rewire the way that we're thinking, and we have to gain alignment with like our beliefs and our goals. You know, when we're not clear on our intent, we create some fuzziness, and that's confusion, and therefore we're never going to act with an aggressive act, right? There's always going to be a hesitation, and a lot of times we've coached that into players. All right, so at the end of the day, you know, we just, I believe that our brain will align our body to our beliefs. It's not the other way around, right? So I think that's how it happens, right? So if you're looking here, I throw this dominoes up here, right? I'm throwing the dominoes up, and what I'm looking at, you know, that is the idea that the hitting mechanics are a series of sub movements, right? One tile hits the next tile, and down they go, right, and around they go, right? So we're going to come back to the slide here real soon, okay? But each movement is a function of the previous movement, and anywhere that there's an inefficient movement, it's going to affect the movement everywhere. That's our butterfly effect, right? So inefficient movement anywhere affects movement everywhere. And if the first move isn't right, we can't expect the last move to be right. Okay? Let's go back. Let's take a look. I think I can do this. All right, so let's take a look and see what happens right out of the gate. Let's watch it again. And we're going to see very early, right, what happens first. If the first move isn't going to be right, we can't expect the last move to be right. If my direction of how I move my body isn't correct to the ball, then I can't expect the last move to be right. I can't expect me to hit the ball correctly. Okay, and then here we can see what happens here. Maybe the domino slides out, whatever. Okay, so first move, right? Think that. Invest your time and energy. Hey, look, if you're a little bit further along, in what we're talking about right now, what I would say is make sure that you understand that that first move is absolutely dynamite. Spend your time on the front end, okay? It will build off to the back end, okay? It will help that to become wonderful, right? If you have heard this is the first time you've heard this, then this is where I'm telling you right now, go spend your time here, okay? And we're going to talk about this here in just a little bit, but I just want you to understand that, right? So think movement, not mechanics. Focus on the beginning before moving to the end, right? So we always want to keep the most important thing. And then what I would say is, hey, become a fuse box. Use the data and the tech that's available to you as a fuse box. Okay, let me get my pointer back out. I'm not getting my pointer. Oh yeah, it's going to work here, right? So you could come in and you're going to label, right? Label each circuit. Understand the wiring. Understand how that wiring is going. Test the circuit. Okay, don't get electrocuted with it. Okay, so that's something that I would probably do. Okay, so be very good with it. So as we start to move into what do I believe in? Well, I believe in and I drew a lot of this from. Well, I drew all of this from Hunter Bledsoe. Hunter's a really wonderful hitting instructor. Great mountain of a man. Strong feet, good hips, and be on time, right? Everything I do revolves around this. This is it. If you're going to write something down tonight, this is it, and this is where we begin, right? So everything I do revolves around this, right? It's the foundation. This is the first brick of my swing strategy, okay? So let's see how this sets up here. So when I was talking about strong feet, I'm going to talk about the setup. There's a lot, and there are. You heard me bash some instructors. There are some really good instructors out there, okay? So don't think that there aren't. You have to find them, okay? But they're there. And so when we're starting to look at it, when we talk about strong feet, we're talking about a good setup, having some stability, getting into a good hinge, having, a good posture, being able to move out to a strong front foot plant. Okay, those are the things that become important to me. Can I play this? I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here. Okay, yeah, let me try to play this. This is, we start talking about that. I think it's going to come up, and I'm going to be able to show you. I don't think it starts out right there. I guess it starts out. Nope. Okay, it's going to come up. It'll load. Okay, but what we're looking at, I call this the CMR video, and the CMR just stands for the corkscrew, the move out, and the rear hip engagement. Okay, so hopefully this will come up and play for us here. Anyhow, I can continue to talk about this. So when we get into our hinge, we get into a good hinge. So we have good posture. I'm not into a squat, but I want to be able to hold this hinge. Okay, and let me turn my phone off because I don't know who would do such a thing. Okay, but in this clip right here, I'm just showing you, there's the stomp, there's the posture. I'm being able to hold my posture and being able to hold the back leg, okay, being able to make sure that it stays solid, that I don't come out of that ground and get into a triple extension of the ankle and the hip and the knee, because when I do that, I'm going to lack the separation. It's going to force everything to come in, right? Well, I think I got this one. I may have skipped ahead of one. This was being on time. This is little Nate Helms, right? And what's going on? You can't see me. I'm off the screen, but he is saying, as I release the ball, he was saying, right now, right now. So, you know, strong feet, good hips, be on time. I must have missed that clip with the hips here. I must have accidentally moved past it. I didn't mean to. I apologize. But basically, what we're looking at the mobility of the hips. It's where we are taking our hands back. We're creating a stretch across the chest. We've got neck pressure where we're turning under our chin. Okay, let me see. Did I corkscrew move? I had them inverted. I don't know if that's the one that we did see. And I think maybe perhaps those stomps might have been in both. So when we do that, we start to move out with the stomps because I want to be able to make sure that I can feel that. Actually, earlier today I was working with one of our players, and he was getting a little extended off the backside once he got into his front foot plant. And so he was able to feel that. So this sort of comes in both. The strong feet here would just be me being able to be anchored, not having that back foot move. Okay, and I'm talking here, and at this moment, we're just there's the stomp, and you can see it coming out of my corkscrew. I held that corkscrew at that point. Okay, and that's what I wanted you to understand in that script. So all right, okay. So that's the philosophy. That's the overarching idea of what's going on, okay? Well, because of that, now I start to look at the basics, and I start looking at what I'm calling attractors, and I'm borrowing this from Randy Sullivan, who does this along the pitching aspect of it, but no one I haven't seen it done with anybody with hitting, okay? So what we're talking about here is, you know, one of the most important strategies when we begin to hit is understanding involves stabilizing the attractors. Hold on here, gang. I just want to reach for something to drink here. Take a breather. By the way, hang out because we got a dancing skeleton coming up. So just hang with me here. So one of the most important strategies involves the stabilizing what we call attractors. So in every human movement, there are components that have to be stable, and then there are other parts that can be variables, right? So like when we're hitting, you know, our feet want to be stable. Our hips, for the most part, sort of, right? If we look at that back, right, it's like a transitional piece, right? So our tilt, one way or the other, that's a variable, okay? That's a variable. So the stable components, they're known as attractors, and those variable opponents, those are known as fluctuators. And this whole idea was first presented by a fellow by the name of Scott Kelso. He has a book called The Dynamic Patterns, the Self-Organization of the Brain and Behavior. And then if you look at this picture, this gentleman right here, this is a fellow by the name of Franz Bosch. He's Dutch. Franz is well recognized in the realm of human movement. He's worked with countless Olympians. And if you've been paying attention, you notice that there's a surge in Dutch baseball. And I think they won the world. Well, I don't know if they won. I think they finished runner-up. They may have won it in the World Baseball Classic or whatever, but he's been monumentally instrumental in Dutch baseball. And so he took Scott Kelso's ideas and he expanded those. And it was it probably came out 7 or 8 years ago, and it was a book called Strength Training, Coordinations, and Integrative Approach. Actually, he's got a new one out like now, like within the last week or two. Okay. And according to Franz, he said that the attractors can be identified by these definitions. So he says this: it's a hitting attractor if part of the movement uh, if parts of the movement present time pressures that require the skill to be performed in a particular manner to be successful, that component is probably an attractor. Well, I would say that when we hit, there is a time pressure. Wouldn't you? Right? And it's probably about 0.42 seconds. Okay. Okay. So there is a time, there is a time pressure that is present in that action. Right. If the failure to perform the skill in a particular manner increases your risk of injury, that component is probably an attractor. Yeah, we see that in hitting. We see some back injuries. We see knee injuries. We get some ankle injuries. We get some tiny miniature hyperextensions of the elbows. So, yep, I think we fulfill that piece of it. And then he would say, if in the vast majority of elite performers, they're going to execute a skill in a particular manner, that component is probably an attractor, right? Well, I would say that over the course of time, in the use of that video that I railed against, this is something positive that came out of that, because, yeah, that's why we started to compare people, because we were seeing certain characteristics, right? And I've been saying for a long time, I love the way Albert Pujols hits. I want to be Pujolean in the way that I hit, but I can't be Albert Pujols in the way that I hit, right? So over the course of time, over the course of time, I've been working to identify, what those list of attractors are in the hitting movement, right? So, before we keep moving on, what I want you to understand is, what do they do? What do these functions do attractors serve? Well, what they're going to do is they're going to remove muscle slack. Okay, they're going to assist in the transfer of energy through the kinetic chain. We talk about removing the muscle slack. You know me and my lead arm lockout. Joey talks about showing the numbers as just a reference point. That's where we're turning our shoulders underneath our chin so that we're keeping that spinal engine intact, right? Because we're going to rotate around the spine. And the more that we come off line with the spine, the less efficient our swing is going to be, right? Attractor functions, how they're going to function, well, they're going to help me in the way that I transfer my energy through the kinetic chain, how I reverberate back through the ground. I don't have to push through China in order to do this, but I do have to engage in the ground so that I'm using the energy I'm pushing in so it comes back out. I'm working against my back foot, not as well. Attractor functions, they're going to direct the energy towards the successful accomplishment of a goal, right? So we're going to move our body in a particular way back through the middle. So, I sort of want to think of energy through a hose, right? If I kink that hose, water through a hose, if I kink the hose, then I'm going to slow the flow of water. Well, the same thing happens with us. When we bend up joints, we start to take away from the energy. We start to dissipate that energy, right? And the hitting attractor, the fourth function of the hitting attractor that I can identify is it helps the hitter, the athlete, safely and efficiently take that energy out of the system, okay, as it moves towards the end of the move, okay? So as we get to the end. So when all this came through, I sort of, to this point in time, and everything's always open for debate, right? Because we have open scientific minds. I've sort of identified 6 of these hitting attractors. So what happens, this is what I start to look at, okay? And I pick on Albert because he's one of my favorite guys. Well, one of the first things I'm starting to look for is, I think I can use my pointer on this. Yeah. Okay, this is not a video. All right, I'm looking for a co-contraction here of that back hip complex. That's everything. That's the abductor, the the adductor, the abductor, the quads, and the hams on the backside, right? So just prior to the first move, I'm looking for that co-contraction. Okay, so we're looking for that. That's what I'm looking for. I debated on how to present these, and I probably did them a little out of order, but I stayed with the legs first. So I just want you to know that. So there is an order, but I probably could be argued that 2 and 3 slides here should be flip-flop. So if I had co-contraction on that back hip, once I hit front foot plant, okay, then I want co-contraction of the front foot plant. And believe it or not, every hitter will come into this position with a bent knee. It will happen. This becomes pretty big for us. This would almost be what we would call the my position, all right, where we're having stretch. And actually, this is just a little bit beyond that. And because we're seeing Albert start to move forward here. But so what we're looking at is for that front hip and the knee and the ankle to have weight bearing once that front foot hits. All right, so here's where we are. So you can see I think I'm just a little out of sequence there. I should have flip-flopped these. But here's where we can see stretching here. That lead arm is stretching out. He's pulling off the muscle slack. I don't know if you can look underneath where I drew this, okay? You can see the ripple in his shirt, okay, where he's stretching that off. He's turning his shoulders underneath his chin. Notice how he's centered off. Okay, he's centered off. He's got great control of his fall, and that's what I would call that stride. That stride's a fall. We can see he's corkscrewed off the backside here. He's held the corkscrew. This back foot is certainly strong in the ground. Okay, those are characteristics that I want to feel when I'm swinging. All right, and now when he begins this swing, that swing's coming from the torso. It's not coming from the back foot. Okay, so he's transferring this idea of elastic energy through the trunk with hip and shoulder separation. We can see his hands are coming forward. His hips have led the way. Now his hands are starting to move here. And then the fifth would be the internal rotation of that back hip. Okay, I said with the big toe rolling or pushing forward, and that's me specifically. I would say when you're looking at this foot re-anchor, sometimes you're going to see this foot up in the air. You see the scissor kick where the foot is slid behind a little bit. Those to me are all in the same family. It's the foot trying to re-anchor in the air. But what we don't see, because this was a still photo, is that this foot actually did get up in the air a little bit. Okay, so that was number 5. And then when he rotates into his deceleration, right, the arms and hands that were loose, he showed us the number. If we were standing directly across from him, we would see his number. So he comes through that. That back hip surely came to a sudden stop, and that's the area that we look at. We look at Eugene Bleecker, and I'll get his name wrong, Joey Coena, I believe, out at 108, and at the farm. They're doing a lot of work with re-anchoring and such. What you see in this photo, though, is actually he has already come through and he has settled back down on his foot. And we have a young man, Josh, who does somewhat of the same thing, and he fools me from sometimes, because sometimes I think he has squished the bug a little bit sometimes, and then we'll take a quick clip, and nope, he was in great shape. In fact, you'll see his foot's actually in the air as well. It's when he sets back down is he gets into that position, right? So let me just go back. I want to go back to these 6 again here. Sorry for that. But when I get back to these 6, what I want you to understand, these first three was the stretch, the back hip co-contraction, front hip co-contraction. They're removing slack and engaging the myofascia, okay? And again, what we're talking about here is right now we're talking about the physical swing, okay? This is not, well, yes, it is. It is a part of your foundation, but this is what I'm trying to look at when I'm looking at the physical swing. This isn't hitting, okay? This is how am I making my swing, right? That fourth attractor That's what's allowing me to maximize the elastic energy, that transfer of energy of the torso out through the arms into the hands. That fifth one was directing that energy. Okay, this is what I would call forward momentum, and then obviously, just getting that energy out. Let me get that pointer out of there, and let's get back through here, and let me get back on track. Okay, so what do I optimize? What am I looking at when I'm looking at these hitting attractors, and what am I optimizing for? Well, what I'm doing is those hitting attractors, those ideas, those 6 things, okay, that we just talked about: the back hip, the front hip, the lead arm, the torso and the rotation, okay, the deceleration, okay. What I'm looking for is, are the characteristics of my swing, are they making those positions stronger, or are they hindering me? Okay, and so we start looking at these characteristics, the 7 traits. This is what we do a lot. This is level 1 swing school. Stretching and loading, leverages, absorption in the lead arm lockout, the forward momentum, sweet spot awareness, body timing, and pitch timing. And you know me, I spend a ton of time down there, right? So when we start looking at stretching and loading, I think this is Chris Davis out in Oakland. Okay, I'm going to get my pointer back. Okay, look at the stretch going through here, right? Look at this lead arm locking out through there, okay? Those are characteristics. If it was me, you wouldn't see me because I don't have a physical capability of extending my arm. I've lost elasticity through me, but you can see him turning under that chin, okay? That's a fantastic set. All right, we start talking about leverage. This is Altuve. Let me play it back here a couple times. Here you're going to see the scissor kick. See that back foot re-anchor? Okay, but notice how he gets onto that back foot. He works against that back foot. He's got great control, and it allows him to turn. Okay, really, these are the types of things that we're looking at. These are the characteristics. These are how I start to set up my drills. The lead arm lockout, when we start talking about absorption. Okay, well, you can see Chris is beat here just a little bit. He's got his hands pulled in. But when we start working on this down at the building, this is where, we bring out the heavy balls. We bring out the basketball, okay? And we're working on making this really good. This would be like Mel Ott drill, okay? All right, we start talking about forward momentum. And I don't know if this will play out well. This is Andrew McCutcheon, and I apologize. When I went through this picked right off, but I think with me, okay, it is. Okay, so we see Andrew working against that back foot. Okay, he's got a little bit of a move back. It's not directly forward, but I think it's Andrew, and I think we can handle some things. But we can see that he comes to that toe of that back foot as he's moving forward. Okay, that's good forward momentum. That's what we're looking for. Okay, sweet spot awareness. We're trying to center the baseball on the center of that bat, right? And you can see his hands are getting a little bit away from him here. His top hand's getting a little bit away from this hitter. But nonetheless, sweet spot awareness, that's what we want to work on. So, and that's where we work like with small balls, the bat and chain, all those items, okay? Okay, and then body timing, and this is Jed Lowry that was out in Oakland, okay? And I just threw this in here, and body timing is the way that you make your swing, okay? I don't care what you do. Pretty much I'm going to tell you it's going to take you anywhere from 0.13 to 0.14 seconds to make a swing. If you're a little bit younger, it might get closer to like 0.15. That's how long it's going to take you to make a swing. Well, that means that's 15 feet of flight. Could be 18 feet of flight, okay, of ball flight. So what we have to be able to do is to make all these movements that we're talking about, and all these times. And if you think you're going to do this, what he's doing, like right here, and now you're going to get to here, and you're going to repeat that over and over. You're going to be similar, but you're not going to repeat it. You're never going to start at the same time. You're never going to have the same move. It's never going to go the same distance. It's going to be pretty doggone close. Don't get me wrong. There is no muscle memory. Okay, let's get that off the table. You can't sign your name twice the same way. You're not going to move twice the same way over this amount of distance. A ball being thrown, right? So if this ball is being thrown here, that's a different timing compared to it being thrown here. That's a different timing. So, right? But this is body timing. This is what I would refer to as body timing. And can I make this tighter? Yeah, well, if I can make a tighter swing, it's going to give me a little bit of time, a little more reaction time. So, yeah, I understand that idea of being efficient, but this most certainly is not where all of this is going to happen, okay? So, then the final characteristic that we're looking at is that characteristic of pitch timing, okay? And the pitch timing would just be the ball being thrown at you, right? So I would say, hey, we got a secret here, right? And the first secret is probably knowing that everything that we've learned to this point in time is probably wrong, and it's been caused by me, right? Too many coaches treating physical symptoms and not the cause, okay? These are the things that I want you to understand, okay? Control what you can control. Control your swing line, control your timing, control what you're swinging at, hunting, control your thoughts, control your feelings, and control your awareness of how you're moving. Now, the second secret that I would have for you is imagination, all right? And this is where I always tease the kids with Barney the dinosaur, right? He told us about imagination. And to this point, intent, what it is that I'm trying to do and what would give to me. If I'm trying to hit a line drive, what does that line drive swing look like? And when kids come in and they show me that line drive swing, I'm not lying to you, almost inevitably the next swing is exactly what they've wanted, right? So how am I going to go about assessing my own mechanics? How do I become my own best coach, my own best teacher, right? Well, I want to have a clear focus on what I'm testing. So I only want to test one thing at a time. If I'm trying to work on that back foot, well, then that's where my intent is. What am I feeling here? Don't expect me to have a great swing on this thing because I'm trying to feel, was I stable on that back foot? I'm going to get my results, right? And if I don't feel it, or I feel like I need to make a change on it so that it's solid in the ground, my heel's not up, I didn't rock back over the midline of my back foot, my toes didn't pick up, whatever it is, then I'm going to work until I get that right? So then it's trial and error. And then once I have that, I'm going to label that. And I'm going to create my own cues for this, right? I know what coach says, but it's got to be me, what I'm saying, right? So we've got a little bit of trial and error working, and now I have to make it mine. So I'm going to do what, cue myself. And what I'm going to say to you is, what if? I'd rather be in, what if I did this? Okay, let's try it. Let's go do a couple of things. Let's write down the result. Okay, I'd rather be what if rather than how to, right? I don't want you to ever say to me, hey, how was that? Okay, unless you've just like drilled something well and like you're needling me a little bit and you give me the, oh, how was that, right? So what I want you to understand, there will never be a definitive answer to an infinite problem. Nobody has the answer for you. No one. I don't care. I don't have your answer when it comes to hitting. What do I mean like it's an infinite problem? Well, every time you move, there's going to be a different set of parameters that are enforced here. Parameters is not the right word. There's going to be a different set of points of reference. I don't know, right? How much energy got into the ground? How much energy got through the lead arm? Where was the bat angle? How did I start to unravel? Was I tilted at 1 degree more or less that time? Was the fastball 0.2 mile an hour faster that time, or was it 5 mile an hour faster that time? All of these things are going to affect it. So there's no way that I can sit there on a tee time after time after time with the idea that that I'm going to accomplish anything when come game time, right? So what's the best cue? What are the best cues? All right, so if I'm going to self-cue, what are the best cues? So, you know, I'm asking you, what does load mean to you? How do you load? Is there only one way to load? Can we, right? And you know me, I subtly load, right? I want that strong back foot with that subtle corkscrew, right? I don't have to lay back, you know. Look, I'm not lying to you. There was a time it was, well, 60%, oh, 55%, oh, 80%. Well, holy cow. I mean, I didn't have a scale out there that was measuring, you know, how far I was leaning one way or the other. So how was I to know that, right? So that's what we were doing in the 70s and in the early 80s. Thank you, video, right? So how do you load? And then, right, and then I think there's a lot of ways to it, right? Look, our cue was when he showed you his back pocket, you know, we show him our back pocket. So um, so that was, you know, that was that. Um, I'm sorry, I'm getting a message from my wife that says picture. I have no idea what that means, and I'm not taking the time to look at it. She'll have to come down, okay, and talk to me. Um, so when do you unload? If you load, when do you unload, right? So what I want you to do is write down your interpretation of what we as coaches are saying to you. Write down your interpretation, right? So these cues, you know, they have to be yours. These cues have to be yours because, right, I don't ever want to do this to a kid. I don't ever want to create to a hitter. I don't ever want to create a program with hopes of transferring practice into a game by addressing symptoms. Excuse me here. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, I am just so going to have to give my wife heck when I get to her. Okay, so I'm going to have to get back in here. Obviously, she has no idea that we are online as we speak. Excuse me, guys. I'm trying to get back to my notes here. Okay, so as I do, let me progress into the next screen. So a lot of times our communication is our issue, right? The communication is our issue. And what I mean by that, it can be the reason why a hitter has poor coordination, right? I mean, we've got a rotational sport with linear cues, right? Take your hands to the ball. Well, that's very linear if you think about it. Move towards the pitcher, okay? And right, and there are, right? These are things, but you have to understand that a player, a young person, they don't understand the nuance that we have as parents or coaches or adults. They don't understand the nuance, right? They don't understand what our intent is when we're trying to tell them these. All they hear is what they're hearing, and they literally hear it, right? So, okay, so cues create intention. Intention creates action. And form will follow function, and that's going to follow your purpose, right? So where I'm at then is you know, motion video, motion capture, that's in place to measure reactions, okay, not actions. Okay, so to say that we have to get to this point, that's not going to ever happen. It's going to tell us how it happened, right? So to change the reaction, we're going to have to change the action, okay? And the fastest way to change the output is to change the input, okay? And by saying all this, what I'm trying to get at here is we have to remember the impact that the brain and the nervous systems have on us, as well as the muscular system, right? And you know, you hear I'm railing a little bit, I ranted a little bit here, but it's not just muscular. But yeah, the muscular plays a part in it, right? So instead of viewing the body as the car, how about we view the body as the driver? Okay, let's look outside the window instead of looking inside, right? So so we're not complicating the issue here. Okay, so as a hitting community, I really do believe that we have to realize that the movements are orchestrated by the brain and the spinal cord, right? And I think that the brain controls the first move, okay, through a feedback system, right? And I don't want to get into that, but I found that most mechanical issues are are driven by purpose. Let me lose my pointer here. Um, Form follows function, okay, which follows the purpose. So if my cue can create an intention, right, put the ball in play, well, that's what it's going to look like. Okay, if my cue is hit hard, well, you're going to start to arrange your body in a different way. Okay, so form follows function, and that's what happens, right? Um, the video, what'll happen is the video will capture function, but it's the brain that's driving the purpose. Okay, inputs become outputs. What I want to have happen will show up on what the swing looks like. So if I change the purpose, I'll change the function. And if I can change the function, then I'm going to change the form. I'm going to change the way that it looks like when I hit. Okay, so right, all of that with the understanding that that the kinetic chain just begins in the brain. And right, and for that matter, the body doesn't know good from bad. It just knows what happened. Meaning, like, it'll timestamp a bad swing. If you get emotional on it, and then it's going to think that you want to do that again, it'll do that again. So, I want to be aware of these types of things. Okay, so about 25 years ago, Paul Nyman coined the phrase "intent to throw hard," and he did that based on his research here of Nicholas Bernstein. Okay, and Bernstein, who I have pictured here, he was a Soviet scientist in the early 20s. And these are the actual photos taken of what he was working on, which became known as the Bernstein principle, which we apply here. And actually what he did was, you can see here in the photo, he took a subject, and these are strings of light bulbs. These are light bulbs that he placed on. These are stone cutters, stone masons. Okay? And his job was to figure out the best way that all stonemasons, stone cutters are going to work in the Soviet, because we're going to be the most efficient stone cutters that the world will have ever seen, and we need this. Okay, and what he did was he put these light bulbs on, and you can see the guy here. He was going to film. He did film. They filmed these guys, and what they found out was that, out of those 100, 100 of them drew their hammer back completely different. Where they were all alike was like when they got to hitting the chisel head with the hammer head, and they were almost all the same. And what Bernstein said was, well, there's repetition without repetition. That variability isn't necessarily negative, but it was necessary for function, and that's going to become pretty important for us, because here in just a second or two, because what I want you to understand is that I think the concept of intent, is widely misinterpreted. It's just become bastardized in the world, and intent, right? And I think what we've done is we've undervalued the importance of the original meaning that Mr. Nyman had. Right? Intent is your purpose. Okay, it's the purpose that why you're making this movement. Okay, if I'm going to try to hit this ball as a line drive off the outfield fence, I am certainly not going to look the same way as if I'm trying to put the ball on play, which looks a little bit like a ground ball to the right side of the infield. Okay, so I have to have purpose. And I'm not saying that there's not a place in the game for a ground ball to the right side of the infield. Okay, but as my base swing, I am saying that my intent is not to hit a ground ball to the right side of the infield. Okay, right? So it's going to affect, if intent's my purpose, then that's the purpose for my movement. And I could have, as I'm working, deliberately practicing, I might have a different intent on each swing. Okay, all right? So it's what I'm trying to feel. It's what I'm trying to create awareness of. So intent has zero to do with effort level. And that's where I think everybody thinks we've gone, right? So intentions are the influencer of the movements. It's the purpose for moving, and intent should not be confused with intensity. Okay, So, right? I mean, I could have intent. It could be used in a lot of different ways. I could have intent to hit hard. I could have intent to hit that ground ball. I could have intent to go to bed early. Okay. So anyhow, inputs become outputs. The kinetic chain begins in the brain, and the body doesn't know good from bad. Okay. So how do we teach the feel? Well, it's sensation. It's the ball on the barrel, right? It's the perception. What should it? What do I think it's going to look like? Right? There's perception. Oh boy, I'm trying to think of a good analogy to that, and I don't have appropriate ones. Okay, so I'll come back. There's association, right? I talked about the barrel hitting that ball. Well, the association here would be when the ball hits me down on the hands, and like I know I'm off the barrel because it stings, right? The perception of what this swing should look like if I'm going to produce that long line drive. Okay, proprioception. What did I feel? How was I feeling it? Kinesthetic awareness. How much did I apply of that energy or did not apply? Okay, so I don't ever want to tell a player what to feel. Don't ever tell him what to feel. We are to ask questions and let him tell us what's going on. Right? Again, the brain thinks in movement. The brain thinks in movements, not in words. So we should not be putting words into him because now he's just going to reinterpret that. And it's going to affect all of those things: sensation, perception, the association, well, which is very physical, but the sensation, the perception, the proprioception, right? Because that's going to be affected. So we got to stop searching for magic and secrets, for the styles. And, what I want to do is stay on your strategy, build your strategy. How is it that we are building swings? Okay. Now, feel, awareness. I want us to have a little bit of fun. Let's make sure that this gets on here. You're going to like this. This is a puppet. Right? Strings. Okay? Each joint being manipulated. Right? Look at everything muscle. All right. So what do I want you to do? I want you to become your own puppeteer, right? So when I start to get to work, I talk about feel. You hear me talk about feel, and you can see a little mind map here. So there's this mind-muscle connection that we create, right? And that's the first thing that we have to be able to do. We have to wire that up. We talked about that fuse box, right? And then there's this coordination of the mind and the muscle, right? If we're going to hit this thing as a line drive, what does that have to feel like? Okay? And that's deliberate. That's focus, right? And now we're trying to explore the different moves that we have in there. Sometimes we hit a pop-up. Sometimes we hit a ground ball. What it is, where should I be grooved? Okay, and you hear me talk about the lead arm through the tunnel, right? Now we're going to start to have the mindful synchronization of that. And now we're going to start to eliminate the stuff that doesn't have a reason for us to be in there, okay? And then it's just reacting to that, right? Mindless optimization. As I go through it and I feel it, okay, whew, and the next thing I know, I've got something else going on, okay? So, when I talk about becoming your own puppeteer, the 7 steps of that is pretty simple, right? Assess those strings. Make assessments of what you're doing. Clearly label each and every one of those movements, okay? I get it loaded into that. I corkscrew that backside. And I'm staying here on the front end, guys, because that's where I think. If the first move isn't right, I can't expect the end to be good. Okay, so you're always hearing me come back to this, all right? Limit the number of the initial strings, right? We saw the little skeleton dancing around, right? So limit the number of initial strings, meaning be stable, work on your stability. Coordinate the single strings. Have that single focus of what you're trying to do with each swing, Okay, simple movements, progressions, the bar move out. Okay, so I go from my setup to my lead arm stretch into my hinge with good posture, into my gentle corkscrew, into the move out where I'm making sure that I'm not making sure that my first move is forward, right? Then I begin to add the complex movements, all right? And then I'm going to challenge and distract what I can do. That's very Franz Boschian, okay? Very Franz Boschian, as I said. I just made that up, okay? So, right? So simple before complex. Learn how to hinge. Never jump straight into your drills. Go back and work your hinge drills, okay? So we've been doing that here recently, right? Get the beginning right. If my beginning is right, everything else is going to be okay. All right, so if you got your pencil and your paper out, okay, if you got your pencil and your paper out, we start working with the hinge, proper way to hinge. I'm not squatting, I'm hinging, okay? So we get to that. Corkscrews and stomps we saw a little bit earlier. I think this is the same thing that's going to play. Oh, it's a little bit different, okay? So you can see if we're looking at my knee, my back knee, it's pointing out a little bit. You can even see in my setup, I've got a little bit of the, of that scissor look. That's always been me. So that's my natural setup right there. Okay. And then I think this comes out to the stomps. That's me engaging the rear hip. That's my rear hip engagement where I want to just bring it to a slam or to a standstill, right? I want to finish that hip turn tight because then that's right. I'm going to pass that energy then up into the upper torso. And that's going to allow me to continue to turn through that. Okay. Eventually that gets out into our stomps where I'm trying to work on the on that strong back leg, not losing stability, not coming out into early triple extension, so I can allow the separation to occur. Okay. Here we have the move outs. These are where the move outs are. Okay, I'm not sure. I think I'm an Olympic bar here. Okay, and this is where I want to make sure I'm not rocking that knee backwards, that the first thing that I'm doing is moving forwards. And if I'm doing this and I'm carrying my hips level and my shoulders level, that bar should not be tilting, right? So it's how I'm carrying myself. Now, if I stay parallel with that move, if I stay parallel, hips and shoulders, that's fine. You're talking about a launch angle of sorts there. I'm not, I don't want to get down that road here. We're just talking about our first moves here, or laying our foundations, okay? So what I want to understand is that the body's #1 priority is self-preservation, okay? So it's simply a protection mechanism, and it censors the environment around us, okay? To see if it's safe or should it go into the fight or flight state. So it doesn't really matter what it senses, if it's physical or imagined. Okay, that's what's interesting about how this works, right? So focusing and feeling the depth and connecting to my practice and my training, it can be simple. Hitting balls on time at 100. That's the lead arm lockout being 100% on time, right? Where we're using that mnemonic, where we're using that right now. That's pretty simple, okay? But what I would tell you is I would become, because of the body is built to protect, I would be very leery to get so involved in excessive T drills. T's do have a purpose. They allow me to feel my body movement, but I don't ever want to be too far away from, from working with a live swing, okay? Because I want to be able to go back in there. I want to feel how I move, then I'm going to go in there and do that, right? So there's no way that that the brain perceives hitting off a tee the same way it perceives a ball being thrown at it, right? So when we talk about that, so it's not perceived as a threat, okay? When the body gets the ball moving towards it at a velocity, there's a heightened alert, system that goes on, right? And we all know that, right? So we sort of get into like a defense mode. And then when the ball's moving like at us at a rapid velocity and it appears as though it's going to hit us, well, our systems will go into overload. It's going to go into protect mode, okay? And that's the issue that I have. That's why there's no transfer from a practice into a game. That's why we have to have game-like situations where we're doing this, okay? And right, and you know, we end up taking swings that only Dancing with the Stars types of people would could appreciate here. So, you know, as we're wrapping up, so that's my issue that I have with tees. It sort of hinders the transfer of practice into a game. Okay, so that's where we're at. Okay, so you know, I think I talked a little bit about the idea of hunting there earlier in one of those earlier slides. I just want to make, you know, that's a little bit more of a level 2, level 3 concept. That wasn't for what we were doing here tonight. But what I want you to understand here is that, you know, you create the game. You create the metrics worth measuring, okay, as the hitter, okay? I want you to become the objective scientist, right? Just simply test your hypotheses, you know, the things you're on, what are you feeling, right? Run some experiments, see what works, see what doesn't, okay? So when we get down to this, you know, train to adjust by adjusting your training, okay? You can't go wrong unless you don't have a clear intention. If your intentions are clear, you're going to be okay, right? The worst thing that you could do is do the same thing, okay? That would probably be the worst thing that you could do. Intention shapes movements. These are all the things that we talked about here tonight. Intention shapes movements. What if versus how to, okay? What if versus how to. What if I did it this way? Because you're going to get your feedback and you're going to know what works best for you, right? Explore with different variables. This is where we get Boschian, okay? Explore with different variables. And this came out of Bernstein's research, right? The Bernstein principle, right? So how do I explore with different variables? Well, Bosch says there's 3 ways we can do this. Change the task, okay? Hit with different stances, hit with different hand positioning, hit with a different movement pattern. Compare and contrast. By comparing and contrast, right, repeat without repetition, your body's going to learn a lot faster, right? He says change the environment, right? Use angles, right? Put some plywood down. Put yourself at different angles that you would never do. Use mats, sponges that you're standing on. Anything that's a little bit different. Put a bat weight on. Put hand weights on. Put ankle weights on, right? Use lighter bats. Use a heavier bat. And I wouldn't go much more than like 10% of either of that, one way or the other, right? Change the body, right? Apply stress. Do partial fatigue, okay? Right? How can I apply stress? Okay, we've got 2 strike hitting right now, okay? That's a stress, okay? If this ball isn't hit this way, that's a push-up, okay? Create partial fatigue. Run the first base, then come back in and have to do that. Okay, so all these ways where we start to create different things, okay? And then we talked about if you can't hinge, you can't utilize the lower half, right? If you can't hinge, you can't utilize the lower half. Mix up your stuff. Use contrasts, okay? Contrasted, it's what we've been talking about. Get creative, right? Use your imagination. Find different ways to go about solving something. Use music. Don't use music. Master the basics, right? Master the hinge. Master the load. Master the move out. Master the foot plant. Master the swing at that point. Master the posture stomps, okay? Right? Be able to do that. Keep a journal. Keep a journal to know what's working and what's not. And then finally, right, create your own menu from the things that you've been doing that you need to work on. And then from that menu, you choose with the amount of time that you have at your disposal on any given day, right? So basically, you know, if we're looking at those 7 characteristics where we're working, right, and I need work in, like, I've identified 2 areas. right? Well, it could be that on 2 or 3 days of week number 1, I just add 1 extra drill or 2 extra drill, whatever time has allotted, into one of those characteristics. All right. So if I need to work on my my stretch, well then, I'm going to add the Mel Ott drill. I might add the Babe Ruth drill. Okay, I need to work on my live hitting. Well then, I'm going to throw live. Okay, and maybe that happens 2 or 3, and I think every session is going to have a live session with it, right? Because a lot of times that we're throwing short at about 18 feet because that's the reaction time. Okay, and maybe that's something that we can talk about the next time. But what I want you to understand, there's no such thing as X amount of reps or X amount of days, right? Because you're going to work on some things, some of those characteristics, and you're going to think you have a pretty good hold on it, and then you're going to go move on to something else. But you might come back. You might come back to those things, right? You might end up having to come back down the road in a month or two, right? Set external goals, right? This is our basketball. When you first come into the building, when we first start working and I have you shoot the baseballs like you're shooting a basket, that's it, right? Set an external goal. What is it that I'm trying to do? What was my feedback to that, right? Did I hit it hard? Did I hit it, period, right? Did I hit my, my early or my late based on using my right now? How did I adjust? Okay, I didn't tell you how to do that. I felt that. And what did you feel? Okay, so let's feel it again, okay? And then we just always we're always trial and error with that, right? So I think that's where we're at, guys. That's all that I got for this evening. Okay. This was the Bosch transferring practice, so I had that. So there you go. Let me pull that back up here for you. Okay. So tasks, variables, environmental variety, body variations. Those are the transferring practice into the game. Wanted to throw that in there to you. So we've gone for an hour and a half. Okay, should have your notebook working. If not, you get a chance to go back and see this. Let me come out of there. Let me get back to here. Hey guys, I just wanted to say thank you